Yes. A very good morning to all of you, and let me extend a very warm welcome to all of you on behalf of the Unique Academy. Today we are going to discuss about one of the very significant important career options, that is career in civil services. And I'll be discussing this topic in terms of various facets of the same, so that it would be convenient for me to explain each and every facet, and also more convenient for you to understand and make sense of the same. Just before I get started with the topic, that is civil services as the best option, let me clarify right in the beginning few things. Number one, I'll be predominantly speaking in English, but बीच में मैं थोड़ा हिंदी भी बोलूंगा और थोड़ा मराठी. But this webinar is basically organized for those students who are going to prepare for the civil services examination with English as their medium. So predominantly ये English में होगा, थोड़ा हिंदी थोड़ा मराठी होगा. Number one. Number two, we have organized this webinar keeping in mind one of the very important unique initiative, that is the initiative taken up by Unique Academy since its foundation in 2006. So this is the second decade. We'll be completing soon in October 2026, 20 years of the establishment of our institution. So we have been taking up one initiative, and that initiative is known as 3 years integrated batch. Okay, and I'll elaborate upon that at the fag end of my discussion, my session. So this is the second one. The third one, the very purpose of this unique initiative, which is known as 3 years integrated course, is to help students to prepare for the civil services examination. And when we say civil services examination, it contains both the civil services examinations conducted by the UPSC, that is the Union Public Service Commission, and also by the MPSC, that is the State Public Service Commission. And since we are talking about Maharashtra, so it becomes Maharashtra Public Service Commission. So this course is basically designed, the course which is known as 3 years integrated course is basically designed keeping in mind those students who have just passed the 12th standard examination. They have entered their graduation phase, and along with graduation, they also decide to, have already decided to pursue the preparation for the civil services. Okay, so these were the few clarifications right in the beginning. So let us get started with today's topic, that is civil services as the best career option. I'm going to use the board so that it would become much more convenient for you. So let us title is civil services, the best career option. And I'm going to take it forward in terms of, let us say, 5 broad points, one by one. I'll just reframe the title of today's webinar. Civil services being one of the best options, Okay. And I'll discuss about that. I'll elaborate upon that. You don't worry about that. Number one. Number two, right at the center of today's discussion is something called as the civil services. Okay, so therefore, obviously, the second important point of our discussion is going to be, okay, civil services. I'll use the short form, and we will take it forward with 2 aspects in our mind. So one is, what is it? So what is civil service if we want to use it as singular, or what are civil services if we want to use it plural? So what is it? So what is civil service? So this would be the first point of discussion as far as the second point is concerned. And then I'll just write down the keyword here. What is the significance of that? Okay, what is the significance of? So these are going to be the main points. Number 2. Number 3, here we have to turn to something called as the 2 constitutional bodies Okay, that is UPSC as well as MPSC. Every state, almost every state has got the State Public Service Commission. If we take the example of state of Maharashtra, that is our state, it is Maharashtra Public Service Commission. And the most important thing, that is the civil services examination. So this is going to be the third point. And the moment we discuss what is civil service, what is the role and responsibility of the civil service as part of the first aspect, on the basis of that, once we discuss that, you would realize, you would come to know as to why civil service is seen as, looked at as so significant in Indian democracy. We will look into that. Don't worry about that. Then, as I stated a while ago, UPSC, MPSC as the constitutional commissions, constitutional bodies, organizing every year the exam, and this is one of the examinations organized by both UPSC as well as MPSC, and this exam is known as Civil Services Examination. Okay, so we'll look into the examination, number 3, and then number 4, something that I talked about right in the beginning as part of my brief clarification, that is the 3 years integrated course. Okay, so this is what we are going to take note of as far as today's discussion is concerned. Now, let me once again welcome all of you on behalf of the Unique Academy. Let us get started one by one. As far as the first is concerned, why best? Okay, I'll be very brief because the discussion of second point with 2 aspects would answer this very first question, point. Why best? Okay, that is why civil service is one of the best. So that's why this is very, very important. One of the best options. I'll elaborate upon that. But the second point would help us a lot. We know for sure as human being, we want to make a mark. We want to influence society in positive sense of the term, in constructive sense of the term. So therefore, when we grow up, in the process of growing up, we think a lot, our parents think a lot, what should be the career option, so on and so forth. So whenever we think about any career option, there are 2 main dimensions which are generally taken into account. So the first dimension, first, let us say, aspect that we think about is there enough opportunity, is there enough space as far as the growth of let us say, a particular person is concerned, and here we are thinking about the student. So does that career option enough opportunity for the student to grow, to progress? And that is something which is generally known as the personal growth, personal development of the student, of the individual. Subsequently, the individual in Indian democracy is known as citizen. So student, individual, and the citizen. So does that career option help and ensure thereby enough space, enough opportunity so that the concerned individual's personal growth take place, progression take place? So that is the first option whenever we think about any career option. And that is obviously natural, and each one of us does think about that first personal, individual, private aspect. But then comes along with the personal, along with the individual, along with the private aspect, something which is known as the social aspect, the public aspect, the collective aspect. Okay, fine. So and so career is going to ensure my personal growth. But after all, I am a human being and I have something, the social dimension, the public dimension. So am I not supposed to think about my contribution to the society, my contribution to the larger collectivity, the society called as Indian society, the nation called as Indian nation? And why only India? We can make it broad as the global south. We can also make it broad and include the entire humanity there. So therefore, this second aspect, the social aspect, the public aspect, also is something which is looked into by all of us, by the students, by the parents, by our teachers, by our professors. Now, taken both of together, that is both aspects together, your personal individual growth as a student, as an individual, as a citizen on one hand, and secondly, the ability to contribute the possibility to contribute even to the social being. If we put both of them together, I think civil services certainly stand out as one of the best career options. Now you can contribute to both your personal growth as well as the social growth, the well-being of the society, by becoming a doctor and providing health facilities which are very, very important for a society. Becoming an engineer, these are the typical traditional career options. Then maybe you can do MBA and join a company, become part and parcel of the management. Then IT, in recent past, IT emerged as one of the attractive career options. Then maybe you can become a professor, a teacher. Then you can establish an NGO, so on and so forth. There are n number of career options. But certainly we have to think about the civil services, and civil services as a government service, as a public service, okay, ensures both undoubtedly your personal growth, your individual growth, your growth as an individual, as a citizen, as a person, no doubt about that. But civil services happens to be one of those few career options through which you can make a positive, constructive mark on your society and contribute to the well-being and welfare of the society in best of the best manner. So potential, we are talking about the potential. So therefore, this is just a brief explanation. So whenever we think about the career options, we have multiple alternatives, let us say, but civil services certainly stands out as that career option, one of the best career options, which can ensure both your personal growth as well as the what? The concern of yours as human being, yeah, ours, let us say, my ability to contribute to the well-being of the society. So let us tick it mark. And anyway, the explanation of the second point also is going to help you a lot. Okay, उसको आगे लेके जाते हैं. Number 2. Now, civil services. Now, what is civil services and what is the significance of that? I am going to be a bit elaborate here. थोड़ा सा ज़्यादा उसको discuss करते हैं. Civil services. All of you know for sure that we are a democracy. ये आपने civics में पढ़ा होगा undoubtedly. 5th, 6th, 7th, 10th, 11th, 12th तक आपने कुछ ना कुछ तो पढ़ा होगा उसके बारे में. Now, as part of democracy, we have 3 branches. One is the legislature. The second branch of government is the executive. Okay, and the third branch, obviously, all of us are very well aware of, that is the judiciary. Okay, now, and let us title it as Indian democracy. So, Indian state, Indian governmental structure, okay, comprises of or is comprised of 3 branches. Legislature, and what is the responsibility of the legislature? Law, making law, yeah, enacting law. What is the responsibility of executive? There are 2 dimensions which are very important as far as executive is concerned. And the first one should be the policy making. Okay, it makes policies. So water policy, environment policy, women's policy, so on and so forth. We have so many sectors of life, fields of our life, spheres of our life, and maybe every sphere require policy. Okay, policy, basically speaking, is a broad guideline as to how to do things in a certain sphere. Water policy, say for example, yeah, national health policy. So making policy is one of the very important responsibility of the task, let us say, job of the executive. And besides that, there is one more aspect of the role responsibility of executive. We can make it simple: implementation. Okay, implementation of what? Implementation of policies and laws. This is more than sufficient. And what does judiciary do? So, adjudication. Plain and simple भाषा में उसको लिखते हैं adjudication. Okay, so this is how we can take note of the broader governmental organization. So, legislature law making, executive policy making, and judiciary as the adjudicative agency. But now what I am going to do is to focus on only that branch of government which is significant for us as part and parcel of explaining the second point. So we'll just focus on that. So we have legislature, we have executive, and then we have the judiciary. And let us, one of the best options, civil services. The second point, what is number 3, the CS exam. And number 4, the 3 years integrated course. That is what something we are going to talk about. Okay. So we briefly discussed this. That is one of the best options. That is civil services as one of the best options. And we were discussing something called as what is civil services. Okay. Now we are a democracy. We have 3 branches of government and briefly touched upon that. Now there are 2 parts of the executive. One is the political executive, which is also known as the government. Okay, this is one. And then there is another part of executive, which is known as non-political, let us say, element of the executive. So executive branch is divided into one, the political executive, जिसको government बोल सकते हैं हम, and the other one, other organ of the executive is the non-political executive. Okay, and now I am going to focus on the non-political executive. Okay, let us look into that. So one wing of executive is the political wing, and the other wing of the executive is the non-political wing. Okay, this non-political wing is generally known as administration. Always keep in mind that. And there is one more word which is used to describe this non-political wing of the executive. This is called as bureaucracy. Okay, I'm going to be a bit detailed here because this governmental organization, making sense of governmental organization is very, very important for you. And I'm sure you must have studied this. You must have read this in your civics books, but उसको हम रिवाइज कर रहे हैं इस तौर से देखिए उसको इस तरीके से देखिए. So legislature, law making, executive, policy making and execution. And executive has 2 wings. One is the political, जिसको हम government बोलते हैं. And then it has got the non-political wing, which is generally known as administration या bureaucracy. But obviously, what administration are we referring to here? What bureaucracy are we referring to here? We are not talking about private administration, किसी company का. We are here talking about the public administration. Here we are talking about the public bureaucracy. So I hope this is now clear. So thus, our governmental organization is organized in the form of 3 branches. Executive is one of the very important branch of the government, which is divided into 2 wings. So one is the political wing and other is the non-political wing, which is known as public administration या bureaucracy. Now, getting back to the point, where are we supposed to locate the civil services? This is a very interesting point here. Executive, non-political, ये थोड़ा रिपीट हो रहा है, होने दीजिए, कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं. Non-political. Now non-political is what? Public administration, bureaucracy. Okay, so this is what we are going to take note of. Now this public administration as part of executive, that is a non-political wing of the executive, comprises of 4 broad services. And that is very interesting. Okay, so public administration is a huge machinery. It is a huge governmental machinery. The public administration, let me repeat it once again, the public administration, the public bureaucracy is a huge, large machinery, and this machinery is known as non-political component of the executive. And executive is one of the three branches. So besides the executive, we have on one hand the legislature, which is generally known as the Indian Parliament at the level of center, and the other wing of the government is the judiciary. Now we are specifically focusing on the executive branch, the non-political wing of the executive branch, public administration and bureaucracy. Now, public administration being a huge machinery, huge governmental machinery, it comprises of four kinds of government services. Okay, so one is the military and let us say paramilitary. You can even say the defense services. Okay, but military and the paramilitary, that is the appropriate word. The second one is the diplomatic service. Now, the diplomatic service usually represent India in the world, in the international affairs. Okay, so that is called as the diplomatic service. Then the third governmental service is the judicial service. Now, we have a very elaborate judicial setup, right from the local courts, court at the taluka level, court at the district level, the district courts, these are usually yani district courts downwards. Okay, these are known as the subordinate courts. But then above subordinate courts, above district courts, we have a very important judicial organization which is known as the high courts, generally at the level of every state. And then ultimately we have the highest court, which is known as the Supreme Court. Okay, we know for sure. So that judicial branch, be it Supreme Court, be it High Court, be it subordinate court, be it district court, be it local court. So those judicial organs also have governmental offices. So it's not that all courts are constituted by only the judges. Judges are definitely there because they are going to listen to the case and matter, listen to both the parties. Okay. And then the final decision, final verdict is given by the judge. But in order to assist the judge and the judges, the judicial organ also require the staff, okay, the servants, and those are known as the judicial services. Okay, so that is the third one. And then comes that service about which we are going to discuss today. And what is the fourth aspect of that? Civil services. Okay, now this is going to be my concluding point. So thus, as part of Indian democracy, we have got three branches of government. If we focus on executive has two wings. One is the political, other is the non-political. As far as the non-political wing of executive is concerned, it is generally known as public administration and the bureaucracy. And that public administration bureaucracy, being a huge governmental machinery, comprises of military, paramilitary services. You can even say defense services, diplomatic, but military is the appropriate word. Diplomatic services representing India in the international affairs, then the judicial services, and finally the civil services. So students, this is how civil services is part and parcel of the public administration, the Indian public administration. Civil service is part and parcel of the Indian public bureaucracy. And this administration and bureaucracy itself is part and parcel of the executive branch of Indian government. I suppose कि ये काफी होगा. Now let us take it forward. And now we know the governmental organization. We have located as to where do civil services, okay, civil services are situated, yeah, placed. So now we know for sure about that. Now focus on the civil services. उसका शॉर्ट फॉर्म भी लिख के रखते हैं सिविल सर्विसेज. ओके, एंड लेट अस बी very clear about that. When we say civil services, we are discussing about both the union level civil services as well as state level civil services. इसीलिए दोनों कमीशन का जिक्र आने वाला है, दोनों एग्जाम के बारे में हम डिस्कस करने वाले हैं. So union level civil services are selected by, chosen by the UPSC, for which UPSC organizes every year one of the very well-known examinations, which is known as UPSC Civil Services Examination. And as far as the state level civil service is concerned, for it, the State Public Service Commission, Maharashtra Public Service Commission, अगर हम महाराष्ट्र की बात करते हैं तो महाराष्ट्र Public Service Commission organizes examination, and this is one of the examination which is known as the Civil Services Examination. Okay, now let us identify the important features of facets of the civil services. First, जो आप सबको पता है, it is basically a government service. So civil services is a government service. This is a very obvious feature. दूसरा है अलग अलग नाम है. This is also known as the public service. एक ही है, उसमें कोई डिस्टिंक्शन नहीं है. It is government service, it is public service. Now, what is the role of government? Now, as far as Indian government is concerned, we are a democracy. Let us not forget about that. So we immediately answer that question saying that to serve the people, to serve the public. So what is the core role of government in India? To serve the people. Now, the government does the same thing through the representatives, that is the member of parliament, and at the level of state, it is the member of legislative what? Assembly, if you are talking about the assembly. Okay, so this is how the government serves the public, and government is assisted by, in serving the public, serving the people, the government is assisted by the government service, public administration, bureaucracy, and one of the very important component element of the administration of the bureaucracy, obviously the public, is the civil services. So it is government service, it is public service. Number two. Number three, why is it that civil services, being a government service and public service, is named as, is known as civil services? Okay, what is that? What is that word? Civil services. And I think the answer lies here because of the role given to the civil service. So कुछ तो रोल उनको दिया गया है. It is a government service, it is a public service, but why is it called a civil service? उसमें कुछ तो है ना. तो ये here lies the answer, because of the role given to the civil service. क्या रोल दिया गया है? So एक एक करके लेते हैं. Now to look after the civic, या उसको आप सिविल भी बोल सकते हो ब्रॉडली, बट सिविक इज द राइट वर्ड, सिविक अफेयर्स. ओके, या उसको रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी भी आप कह सकते हो. दिस इज अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट फीचर ऑफ, and even we can say the function, the core responsibility of the civil services. So civil services as a government service, as a public service, is given what role? The role to look after, okay, the civic या civil affairs या responsibilities. अब आपको दूसरा सवाल आएगा कि what is mean by civic या civil affairs? What does civic affair, okay, exactly contain? Yeah, what do civic affairs, if we are using it as a plural, so what do civic affairs exactly contain? तो उसका भी हम यहाँ पे डिस्कशन करने वाले हैं, और उसमें तीन चीजें आती है, and we will just point it out one by one. Now, the civic affairs, civic को हम बॉक्स करते हैं, क्या क्या आता है उसमें? So one aspect of the civic aspect, civic responsibility is revenue. We know for sure government is a huge machinery. There are two very important wings of the government, especially of the executive. One is the political executive, which is generally known as the sarkar ya government. And government is constituted by the members who are elected by the people. As part of democracy, we know for sure. So at the central level, we have MPs as representatives. At the state level, we have MLAs. Generally, that is how we recognize them. But the other wing of the government is very important, and that is what we are talking about: the administration, the bureaucracy. And of the four elements of the bureaucracy, the fourth element is the civil services, which is a government service, which is a public service. But the role which is assigned to the civil service as a government service is the civic responsibility. Now, किसी भी government को, the government, in order to serve the public and the people, has to take up multiple functions. And those functions cannot be fulfilled, okay, without the resources, without the money. So therefore, the government is going to require money to be expended in order to serve the people, and therefore government requires revenue. So in the very important process of collection of revenue, the civil services plays a very significant role. और by the way, आपको आप में से बहुत सारे लोगों को ये पता होगा कि IAS, इंडियन एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव सर्विस, उसमें से एक पोजीशन है IAS का. देन वी हैव IPS, इंडियन पुलिस सर्विस. देन वी हैव रेवेन्यू, इंडियन रेवेन्यू सर्विस. उसमें भी दो, एक है IT, दैट इज इनकम टैक्स, और दूसरा है कस्टम्स एंड एक्साइज. अब बिफोर इंडिपेंडेंस, एंड स्टिल वी कीप ऑन यूजिंग दैट वर्ड, बिफोर इंडिपेंडेंस द सर्विस यूज्ड टू बी नोन एज द इंडियन सिविल सर्विस, ICS. और उसमें जो सबसे बड़ा पद था, तो कलेक्टर was the word used to be described. Still we keep on using the word collector. Now collector कहां से आया है? Now during British period, during colonial era, that highest administrative position, okay, from the ICS, was given the main responsibility of collecting the revenue. So that is how the name collector, responsible for collecting the revenue, and one of the most important sources of collecting revenue for the government before independence was the land revenue. So collector hai. Okay. Now in post-independent India, the IAS is in a very limited sense related to, connected with the revenue. But we have got two major services from the civil services. So we have, as I just a while ago referred to that, Indian Revenue Service, IRS, Income Tax, IT, and then the Indian Revenue Service, Customs and Excise. Now these two services, IRS, IT and IRS, Customs and Excise, they are integrally, very closely linked with, associated with the process of collecting revenue. एक करता है इनकम टैक्स से रेवेन्यू आता है, क्योंकि टैक्स इज वन सोर्स ऑफ द रेवेन्यू एंड दिस इज अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. सो टैक्स में डायरेक्ट टैक्स होता है, इनडायरेक्ट टैक्स होता है, वो बाद में आप पता करोगे. सो रेवेन्यू. दूसरा है विच इज सिग्निफिकेंट, लॉ एंड ऑर्डर. Now civic responsibility, या civil responsibility also contains the second important task, that is the law and order. Now who is given the responsibility of maintaining law and order? हम सबको पता है, the police. And therefore in UPSC, यानी कि Union Level Civil Services, there is a separate service known as Indian Police Service. And at the level of states, if we are talking about MPSC, then they have the DYSP, okay, Deputy Police Superintendent. तो वहां पे भी वो पुलिस का एक अलग सर्विस है. So law and order being the second facet of the civic responsibility, okay, which is given to the police service, IPS या DYSP at the level of state. So this is the second one. The third one, which is equally important as far as the civic responsibility of the civil service is concerned, जिसको थोड़ा सा आपको कॉम्प्लेक्स लगेगा, फिर भी मैं लिखता हूं वहां पे, क्वाज़ी जुडिशियल पावर्स. मैं पावर्स का खाली पी लिखता हूं. सो व्हाट इज द थर्ड एस्पेक्ट ऑफ सिविक रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी? क्वाज़ी जुडिशियल पावर्स, क्वाज़ी जुडिशियल अथॉरिटी. नाउ जुडिशियल का तो हमें पता है, जुडिशियल इज पार्ट एंड पार्सल ऑफ द मेन स्ट्रीम रूटीन जुडिशरी, where matters are taken up. There are usually two parties, and parties argue their own cases and their point of view. We know for sure the judges listen to both the parties and then come up with impartial, judicious, let us say, decision or verdict. That is the usual functioning of the mainstream judiciary. But our civil service, our civil servants are also given some functions which are like the judiciary. वो पूरे जुडिशियल नहीं है, इसीलिए तो क्वाज़ी बोला है उसको, QUASI. क्वाज़ी का मतलब हाफ. ओके, आपने ये सुना होगा कि बहुत बारिश हो रही है, इफ वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट अ सिटी या एनी डिस्ट्रिक्ट लेटर से, और बारिश हो गई, तो पहला तो इशू ये आता है कि कल का स्कूल का क्या होगा, कल का कॉलेज का क्या होगा, एंड स्पेशली द मैटर बिकम्स ग्रेव इन रिस्पेक्ट विथ या अबाउट द चिल्ड्रन. एंड देन the school administration usually wait for the collector order. We keep on saying that, collector order. Now collector, as the highest administrative officer at the level of the district, okay, is given the authority to decide on the matter. If there is some sort of natural calamity, okay, then what is to be done? Are we supposed to shut the school, shut the college, shut the university, public other places and services? So that call, that decision has to be taken by the administrative officers, that is the civil servants in their capacity. तो इसीलिए उसको क्वाजी जुडिशियल भी बोला गया है. एंड देन कम्स अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट वन, the last aspect of the civic responsibility, that is what? Development. Developmental functions. What is that? Developmental functions. Now you must be wondering as to what does developmental function exactly contain. उसको simplify भी कर सकते हैं. We have parliament which makes laws, and one of the important objectives of the law is to develop the society. We can definitely say that. We have executive which frames policy, and one of the important objectives of framing public policy which is done by the executive is development of society. Now we require constitution in order to develop our society. We have that. We require laws. We have law-making organ called as parliament at the level of center. Then we require policy, for which we have a separate branch of government which is known as executive. Then we require adjudication, impartial adjudication, and therefore we have got a separate wing called as the judiciary. However, the laws made by parliament, the policies framed by the executive, and the decisions taken by judiciary needs to be implemented on ground. And I think implementation of laws, policies, schemes, programs, and judgments of the judiciary is part and parcel of the process of development. So if the laws, which are best of best, say for example, if there is a best policy, now if we neglect the process of implementation of the policy and law, then उस अच्छे लॉ का, अच्छी पॉलिसी का कुछ अच्छा नतीजा नहीं निकलेगा. So therefore, developmental function primarily contains implementation and execution of those laws, those policies, those schemes, those programs which are basically taken up by the government, by the legislature, in order to ensure the development of Indian society in general, and especially the needy sections, the weaker sections of our society. So that is how we can take note of the developmental function. Now I'm going to just clean the entire board and focus on that. I hope now you have the answer as to what is the civil services. Civil services performs the civic responsibilities and these civic responsibilities, one is the revenue. I'll just write it down. The second is the law and order. The third is the quasi-judicial functions. And the fourth is the developmental function, yeah, developmental responsibility. Okay, developmental functions. Okay, so this is civil service. It is a government service with what responsibility? Civic responsibility. उस civic को हमेशा ध्यान में रखिए. Okay, so civil services basically is given the task, given the job, given the function, given the responsibility, given the role. I'm using all these words just for sake of convenience interchangeably, synonymously maniye. Okay. To fulfill the civic responsibility, and the civic responsibility contains revenue, जिसके लिए गवर्नमेंट को पैसा लगने वाला है, और वो पैसा कहां से आएगा? रेवेन्यू से आएगा. टैक्स, डायरेक्ट टैक्स, इनडायरेक्ट टैक्स, so on and so forth. दूसरा है लॉ एंड ऑर्डर. नाउ कैन वी इमेजिन ऑफ डेवलपमेंट ऑफ अ सोसाइटी विदाउट लॉ एंड ऑर्डर? इट इज वेरी डिफिकल्ट. ओके, ना के बराबर ही होगा, इसलिए पुलिस है. क्वाजी जुडिशियल फंक्शंस आल्सो आर टू बी टेकन अप एंड फुलफिल्ड बाय द सिविल सर्वेंट्स. And last but not the least, developmental functions. So this is one way of understanding the civil services. Now, there is one more way of, and I did refer to that. What is that? Civil services is into two kinds of, let us say, functions, या two aspects of roles. ये फिर से मैं दोबारा थोड़ा सा कह रहा हूं. One is, okay, implementation. of what? Of laws, of policies, of schemes, and any other government initiative. सो सिविल सर्विसेज आप उसको इंप्लीमेंटेशन भी कहिए या आप उसको थोड़ा सा अलग शब्द भी इस्तेमाल कर सकते हो. दैट इज द वर्ड एग्जीक्यूशन. इंप्लीमेंटेशन या एग्जीक्यूशन ऑफ लॉज, सॉरी, ऑफ पॉलिसीज, ऑफ स्कीम्स, ऑफ इनिशिएटिव. ये बहुत ही इंपॉर्टेंट काम है. आई एम श्योर यू मस्ट हैव read about this, studied about this, heard about this, watched, okay, yourself this task, which is implementation of this. Okay. और ये कैसे भी नहीं चलेगा. If laws are good, if laws are best, the process of implementing the law, such a law, has also to be best, bestest of the best. And here lies the significance of the civil services. I'll come back to that. Okay. दूसरा है senior bureaucrats, senior civil servants. अब हम सीनियर एडमिनिस्ट्रेटर, सीनियर ब्यूरोक्रेट्स, सीनियर सिविल सर्वेंट्स, ओके, also plays a very significant role, and that is the second aspect of the role of the civil services. ये मैंने अलग से, तो ये तो this is one तरीका of making sense of the role and responsibility of the civil services from revenue to the developmental function. We are trying to understand the same thing, but slightly in a different manner. So one is implementation and execution. That is the main task of the bureaucracy, of the administration, and as part of administration bureaucracy of the civil services. No doubt about that. Okay, दूसरा. Now, when you go up in the ladder, in the hierarchy of the administration, आप junior level पे join किए हैं, आपका seniority हुआ है, and then you are promoted. Okay, धीरे 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 आप उस hierarchy में ऊपर जा रहे हो. So you become a senior civil servant. Now, the most important role responsibility of a senior civil servant, या senior bureaucrat is what? Giving advice to the ministers. ये बहुत ही अहम काम होता है. What is that? Advice to the ministers. और ये advice दो चीजों के लिए हो सकता है. So this advice by the senior civil servants be given to making law, to the process of making law, and secondly also to the task of, to the process of making policy. आपको आप समझ में आया होगा. Now the lower level civil service, lower level, the medium level civil service is basically into something called as implementation and execution of laws and policies. Any other scheme, initiative which is taken up by the government to develop the society. ये fine, ये हम सबको पता होता है. लेकिन ये, as you go up in the ladder, become a senior civil servant, since you have sizable experience at your disposal, being a senior bureaucrat, you acquire the authority, the expertise to advise your minister. जो भी किसी मिनिस्ट्री का या डिपार्टमेंट का होगा वो. ओके, तो वन इज advising the minister in order to frame good policies, best of the best policies. That is one thing. And the second thing, even advising, because our ministers are also legislatures. Our minister has to be member of the Lok Sabha या Rajya Sabha. So they are also member of the legislature. And being member of the legislature, they are supposed to take up the most important task as member of the legislature, that is the law making. तो ये एडवाइस दोनों चीजों के लिए है, उसको थोड़ा लिख के भी रखते हैं. ये एडवाइस हो सकता है लॉ मेकिंग के लिए और ये एडवाइस हो सकता है पॉलिसी मेकिंग के लिए. नाउ स्टूडेंट्स, looking at these 6 things, so 1 2 3 4 and 1 2, these are taken together. These are the 6 things, let us say that 6 aspects, let us say that these are not completely separate and distinct from each other. There is a lot of overlap. So this is one way of understanding the role of civil services: collecting revenue, maintaining law and order, also taking decisions about certain matters, quasi-judicial, and the developmental initiative. And again, understanding the same thing in the form of implementation, execution of the laws and policies, and in capacity of a civil servant, senior civil servant, advising the ministers, advising the people's representatives in order to make law, enact law, and in order to frame policy. Now, I guess the 6-fold, let us say, उसको बोलिए, जो भी आपको उसका नंबर इधर उधर हो सकता है, इफ वी आर केयरफुल अबाउट, ओके, these facets, these अलग अलग functions, these अलग अलग roles of the civil service, okay, then one should not explain at all as to why and how the civil services become a very significant part of Indian democracy. Okay, अगर किसी ने आपको पूछा कि सिविल सर्विस की अहमियत क्या है, सिविल सर्विस क्या करता है, क्या कर सकता है, तो इतनी सारी चीजें कर सकता है. एंड आई एम गोइंग टू समराइज दैट in the form of the third point, sorry, second aspect of the second point. We will look into that. And I'm going to title it as that. What is the significance of the civil service? और ये मत भूलिए, we are discussing about both UPSC as well as the MPSC. So what is the significance? अलग अलग तरह से हम लिख सकते हैं. Okay, उसको भी हम 2B कहेंगे. So the A is, अब सिंपल सिंपल भाषा में हम लिखते हैं, इट इज गवर्नमेंट ऑन ग्राउंड. एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन, ब्यूरोक्रेसी, सिविल सर्विस इज व्हाट? गवर्नमेंट ऑन ग्राउंड. क्योंकि ग्राउंड पे एमपी नहीं, कभी तो आएंगे एमपी, कभी तो आपका मिनिस्टर आ सकता है, बट ग्राउंड पे जो काम करते हैं ऑन बिहाफ ऑफ द गवर्नमेंट एंड ऑल्सो एज पार्ट ऑफ द गवर्नमेंटल मशीनरी, it is the administration, it is the bureaucracy. So therefore, civil service as part of administration and bureaucracy is understood always, is always seen as government on ground. वही पॉइंट, वही मुद्दा हम अलग तरीके से भी लिख सकते हैं, it is the face of government. और यूजुअली आप पेपर पढ़ते वक्त आपको ये पता चलता है कि whenever administration gets into any kind of brutality, coercive measures, okay, police for example doing lathi charge and so on and so forth, then not only the administration criticized, but along with criticizing the administration and the police machinery, the elements from civil society, media, the opposition also make it a point to criticize the government, because ultimately the government regulates and controls the public administration. The ultimate charge of the administration is with the ministry, and the highest political office in our parliamentary democracy is that of the prime minister, then the cabinet minister, then the union minister, then the state minister, so on and so forth. Okay, so whatever administration does on ground, it is always seen as something which is done by the government itself. So therefore, we have to keep in mind that ultimately civil services operates as a face of government. It is recognized as face of government. इसीलिए वो अगर अच्छा काम करेगा तो गवर्नमेंट की तरफ अच्छी तरीके से देखा जाएगा, वो बुरा काम करेगा, वो ब्रुटैलिटी करेगा, कोर्सिव मेजर लेगा, आपका एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन, आपका ब्यूरोक्रेसी, आपका सिविल सर्विस, तो गवर्नमेंट को क्रिटिसाइज किया जाएगा. सो फेस ऑफ द गवर्नमेंट. तीसरा जो है विच इज वेरी वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट, it holds, okay, it holds a lot of potential. It holds a lot of potential. I'm using this word. It holds a lot of potential to contribute positively. थोड़ा सा रिफ्रेम करते हैं उसको. Positive intervention in society. And therefore, I'll get back to the first point and the title of today's webinar, why civil services is one of the best options. And right at the beginning, I did point out two concerns of all of us whenever we think of any career option. One is the personal growth, individual growth, and other is the ability thereby to even contribute to the well-being and the development of the society, of the collectivity of our nation. तो ये देखिए, civil services as a government service undoubtedly holds the potential of making a mark through something called as the positive intervention in society. Okay, क्योंकि उसको क्या दिया गया है? डेवलपमेंटल रोल दिया गया है. नाउ कई पेरेंट्स को, कई स्टूडेंट्स को यह सवाल होता है कि डज ब्यूरोक्रेसी, डज एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन, डज सिविल सर्विस रियली डू दैट? Does it hold, does it possess the potential of making a mark and ensuring a positive intervention? Absolutely yes. Okay, हाँ ये होता है कि there is lot of corruption in bureaucracy, there is lot of corruption in civil service, so on and so forth. There is lot of interference, political interference in the civil service, so on and so forth. These are all part and parcel of our political life, our collective public life. Nobody can deny that. But still, there are few civil servants, there are few bureaucrats, there are few public functionaries, okay, who are doing wonderful job. Not by uttering a word. They are very silent. They are operating as if behind the curtain, and they are contributing silently by using the authority which is given to them by the Constitution and making a very positive intervention in the society. I think this is therefore one of the best career options, holds the potential. Always usko dhyan mein rakhiye, it holds the potential. I am not claiming that civil service is actually doing that. But the point is, civil service absolutely can do that. It holds the potential. And we can name so many bureaucrats, but no need to look into that. ये वाला है. और चौथा जो है, which is equally important, this is a larger point, and here we are talking about the society at large. But here I'm going to focus on something very specific of the society. Okay. Positive change in the lives of weaker sections. मैं खाली एक ही शब्द इस्तेमाल कर रहा हूं, weaker sections. You can use so many other words. Weaker sections, vulnerable sections, downtrodden, the neglected sections. If we think about our society, we have scheduled caste, we have scheduled tribe, we have women, we have children, we have age-old people. Okay, so there are number of needy sections who are in the requirement of some resource, who are in requirement of good education, who are in requirement of good health facilities, so on and so forth. But somehow they do not have the essential resources to do the same thing. So therefore, those are the needy sections. They are capable, they are willing to do work, but somehow they are not getting work, no means of livelihood, and therefore they do not have resources at their disposal so that they can avail these basic facilities. उसको हम needy sections बोलते हैं. तो उस needy sections को आप definitely उनके life में positive change ला सकते हो. Because bureaucracy, administration, and as part of that civil services enjoys a lot of power and authority. And believe me, you can look around you, you can take a number of examples, look into those examples very critically, and you would realize, you would come to know that yes, at least there are few bureaucrats, few civil servants who are using their authority in order to do the same thing. So you can make a positive change, not only in society in general, but particularly which section of society that we always think about and must think about, that is the weaker section of the society. So students, this is how I'll sum up this discussion by writing something in a box. Sorry. तो वो क्या होगा? Let us make it very simple. पहला, the success or failure of government dash 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 dash. The success or failure of a government to substantial extent, to great extent, depends upon the quality of the civil services and the actual role which is performed by the civil services. Always keep in mind that. And therefore, I would appeal all of you, those who are interested, those who are passionate. Okay, I'm not saying that all of us must join the civil services, but those who are seriously thinking about this option, they must realize that the failure or success of a government to great extent, to substantial extent, depends upon how good the civil service is, to what extent it can exercise its power and make a positive mark in society in general and the weaker sections particularly. So success and failure of government to great extent depends upon. मैं ये नहीं कह रहा हूं कि only depends upon civil service, not at all, to great extent. So civil services and the performance of civil services happens to be one of the determining factors here as far as the success and failure is concerned. दूसरा, the second thing which is equally important, थोड़ा सा broad करके हम बोल सकते हैं, the success, failure उसको ही मैं थोड़ा ब्रॉड करके ऑफ आवर डेमोक्रेसी also depends upon the working of, and as one of the factors, I'm saying, as one of the factors, we need to have a good parliament, we need to have a good government, we need to have a good judiciary, no doubt about that. We need to have good civil service. We need to have an independent, impartial media, which is which is courageous enough to take on to the sitting government. Okay, it is not afraid of the sitting government. पावर को डरते हैं हम, जो पक्ष पार्टी जो पार्टी पावर में होती है तो हमेशा तो मीडिया डरता है. दैट शुडंट बी द केस विथ मीडिया. मीडिया ऑलवेज हैज टू बी ऑटोनॉमस एंड इंडिपेंडेंट. उसकी भी जरूरत हमें लगती है. सो देयर आर एन नंबर ऑफ फैक्टर्स which determines the success या failure of the democracy. One thing which is important here is one factor which can play a significant role in success or failure of democracy, but let us say success of democracy, is the working of the functioning of the civil services. This is how we can take note of the significance of the civil services. Okay, मैंने जो दूसरा ए था उस पे मैंने 6-fold functions, the job, the responsibility of civil service की चर्चा की. एंड हियर जिसको हम थोड़ा सिंपल सी भाषा में 2B, वो था 2A. 6 फंक्शंस जो मैंने बताए थे आपको, ये 2B है जिसमें हमने क्या अंडरस्टैंड करने का प्रयास किया है. वी ट्राइड आवर बेस्ट टू अंडरस्टैंड द सिग्निफिकेंस ऑफ द सिविल सर्विस, और इससे वो सिग्निफिकेंस आपको पता चलेगा. नाउ लेट अस मूव ऑन टू द थर्ड पॉइंट. Here we have to refer to something called as the two constitutional bodies, okay, and then the civil services examination. Okay. Now the last point that we concluded just a while ago, few seconds ago, the civil services is significant because it is government on ground. It is significant because it is face of government. It is significant because it holds the potential to positively impact our society. It is significant and important, critically important, in the sense that it can make a very positive mark and positive change in the lives of millions of the weaker sections of our society. And to conclude with those 2 points that I had written a while ago on board, the success and failure of a government on one hand, and thereby the success or failure of our democracy to great extent depends upon the nature, the character, and the actual functioning of the civil services. Okay, and that is how one can understand the significance. And I think Indian constitution makers, okay, were fully aware of सो इंडियन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन मेकर्स का मतलब ही क्या है, तो हम अब सिंपल सी भाषा में बता सकते हैं कि इंडियन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन. ओके, द इंडियन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन मेकर्स एंड इंडियन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन वाज फुल्ली अवेयर ऑफ this governmental machinery called as public administration, public bureaucracy, all governmental services, and importantly as part of that the civil services. So the Indian constitution makers were fully aware of the significance of the civil services as a government service. Indian constitution was fully aware of that, and having been fully aware of that, what did they do? They provided for a constitutional body. और क्या नाम है उस कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल बॉडी का नाम? तो ये जो कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल बॉडी है, दिस इज द यूपीएससी, एंड अनदर बॉडी इज द स्टेट पब्लिक सर्विस कमीशन, दैट इज द एमपीएससी, सिंस वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट द एमपीएससी. सो कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन मेकर्स वे आर फुल्ली अवेयर ऑफ द सिग्निफिकेंस of the civil service as a government service. So what they did in the constitution was to provide for a constitutional body, a commission, which is known as the UPSC, Union Public Service Commission. And similarly, at every level, State Public Service Commission, Maharashtra Public Service Commission, in case of Maharashtra, to do what? To hold, to organize, to schedule regular examinations, okay, in order to recruit members to the civil services. As far as UPSC is concerned, okay, we can make it very, very simple. as far as the UPSC is concerned, there are around 20 to 25 civil services as far as UPSC is concerned. And then if we take note of the MPSC, the Maharashtra Public Service Commission, again, we can roughly say 20 to 25, okay, positions. We have DYSP, we have Deputy Collector, we have Tehsildar, we have Naib Tehsildar, so on and so forth. Okay. So these are number of posts. ये थोड़ा कम ज्यादा होता है, हर साल उसका number कम हो सकता है, but that is not important right now. What is important here is constitution makers being fully aware of the significance of the civil services, and therefore, in order to select the civil service without any corrupt practice, impartially, transparently, and in an accountable manner, ये हर एक शब्द important है. Without any corrupt practice, without any undue influence, without any political interference, very transparently and objectively and impartially. That the constitution makers provided for a constitutional commission, which is known as UPSC at the union level, and similarly, State Public Service Commission, that is the constitutional commission at the level of state. So this is what our constitution has done. Okay, in order to recruit, in order to select them as the qualified candidate. And then comes this one, something called as the exam. So let us be very clear about one more thing about UPSC and MPSC. These are constitutional bodies, no doubt about that, provided for right in the Constitution of India. Number two, these bodies, constitutional bodies, UPSC, MPSC, okay, holds different kinds of examinations in order to recruit the government service. And let me repeat it once again. Government service is a large machinery which contains military, paramilitary, then the diplomatic, then the judicial services, and then the civil services. So UPSC, MPSC conducts number of examinations, and today we are going to just briefly talk about and touch upon something called as the civil services examination. Okay. Now, what is the structure of the civil services examination? So we have the prelims, then we have the mains, and then there is the third stage, which is known as personality test. Okay, the prelims is for 400 marks, the mains is for 1750 marks, and the personality test is there for 275 marks. Okay, now let me just clear it, and let me clear it, the entire board. So civil services, sorry, ये थोड़ा repeat होगा लेकिन ठीक है, civil services examination, and we are talking about both the UPSC as well as the MPSC. Okay, now as far as the UPSC is concerned, there is prelims for 400 marks, there is mains for 1750 marks, and then there is personality test, which is usually and popularly known as the interview, and that interview is for, what is the weightage? 275 marks. Now this is about the UPSC, and let us also look into something called as the MPSC as well. Okay, now as far as first stage, second stage, the third stage, again the first stage in prelims of, we have 400 marks, but mains, now MPSC recently, very recently, last week, has made a change, very significant change in the mains examination. The syllabus is same for mains examination of both UPSC as well as MPSC. Then the nature of the mains examination, this is descriptive written, this is also descriptive written, but एक change क्या किया है? The MPSC mains examination, is of only 1250 marks. ये ध्यान में रखिए आप. यहाँ कितना है? 1750. इसमें क्या क्या है? So उसमें एक है GS जो 1000 मार्क्स के लिए है, दूसरा है ऑप्शनल जिसको 500 मार्क्स दिए गए हैं, और तीसरा है 250. ये मैं थोड़ा अलग अलग लिख रहा हूं, टाइटल्स मैंने बदले हैं. the third paper is, sorry, the third component is the essay paper. Okay, so उसको थोड़ा अगर systematically लिखना है तो ऐसे लिखेंगे उसको. So one is the GS, the second is the optional for 500 marks, and the third is the essay paper, which is for the 250. So 1500 and 250 ये मिला के बनेगा 1750, यानी कि 1700. यहाँ प्रीलिम्स तो सेम है, मेंस में अलग है वो. अब यहाँ क्या क्या है, यहाँ जीएस है 1000 मार्क्स के लिए, और यहाँ ऑप्शनल को उन्होंने ड्रॉप किया है और खाली ऐसे पेपर है, इसीलिए एमपीएससी का मेंस बनता है 1250. ओके, 1250. ओके, एंड देन कम्स द पीटी. मैं शॉर्ट फॉर्म उसका इस्तेमाल करूंगा. बोथ पर्सनैलिटी टेस्ट्स, दैट इज फॉर द यूपीएससी, फॉर द एमपीएससी, दे कैरीज द इक्वल अमाउंट ऑफ वेटेज, यानी कि इक्वल वेटेज दोनों को 275 मार्क्स है. Now, just one more thing as far as the nature and scheme of the examination is concerned. अब ये जो प्रीलिम्स है ना, कि जो सिमिलर है दोनों में, अब इस प्रीलिम्स का सबसे बड़ा अगर कोई नेचर का कीवर्ड है, तो प्रीलिम्स in UPSC as well as MPSC happens to be objective test, which is based on multiple choice questions. It has got negative marking system. So that is the first one. The means examination of both UPSC and MPSC, we know the difference now. Okay, खाली MPSC मेंस में ऑप्शनल को हटा दिया है, बाकी सब चीजें हैं. यहाँ 1000 मार्क्स के लिए जीएस है, यहाँ भी 1000 मार्क्स के लिए जीएस है. दोनों का सिलेबस सिमिलर है. So GS means 1000, GS means 1000, both in UPSC as well as MPSC has similar syllabus. दूसरा है ये, यहाँ तीसरा मैंने लिखा है ऐसे इज सिमिलर वन. दोनों में ऐसे है, दो सब्जेक्ट के आपको ऐसे लिखना है, और दोनों को मिला के 250 है. सो 250 है उसमें. ओके, आप व्हाट इज द नेचर ऑफ द मेंस एग्जामिनेशन, जैसे मैंने प्री का ऑब्जेक्टिव लिखा है, तो आप में से सबको पता होगा ये दोनों को अप्लाई होता है, यूपीएससी मेंस और एमपीएससी मेंस को. क्या टाइप का एग्जामिनेशन है ये? डिस्क्रिप्टिव है. ये क्या टाइप का एग्जामिनेशन है? ये डिस्क्रिप्टिव है. और एक पॉपुलर वर्ड हम उसको इस्तेमाल करते हैं, मेंस एग्जामिनेशन ऑफ बोथ यूपीएससी एज वेल एज एमपीएससी इज रिटन इन नेचर, is descriptive in nature. Okay, so we'll look into that. And then comes the last phase, that is the personality test of 275 marks based on your personal information. Both commissions, to a panel of 5 members, UPSC as well as MPSC, okay, interview the candidate who qualify and all those candidates who qualify in the mains examination. Okay, so this is what broadly the structure of the civil services examination, comprising both the UPSC as well as the MPSC. Now, let us not forget that the personality test, that is the interview, is an oral test. So keyword देखिए, prelims objective है, मेंस डिस्क्रिप्टिव रिटन है, इट रिक्वायर्स अ डिफरेंट क्वालिटी. और ये जो पीटी है उसको भी हम लिख के रखते हैं ना, व्हाट काइंड ऑफ टेस्ट इज इट. आपको बोलना है, आपको बातें करनी है, ओरल टेस्ट है, सिंपल सी बात है. सो दिस इज अबाउट द सिविल सर्विसेज एग्जामिनेशन. एंड नाउ लेट मी टर्न टू द लास्ट पॉइंट ऑफ माय प्रेजेंटेशन. व्हाट इज दैट लास्ट पॉइंट? ओके, दिस इज 3 years integrated course as the unique initiative. Now, what is the purpose of this course? The purpose of this course is to start, preparing for now CSE, okay, right after what? The 12th. उसका मतलब है ड्यूरिंग ग्रेजुएशन. दिस इज द मेन पर्पस. अब देखिए, आई वेरी ब्रीफली elaborated upon the scheme of the UPSC MPSC civil services examination. So first is the prelims. There are only two papers. One is the GS, the other is the Civil Services Aptitude Test. Then there is the mains examination. In mains examination, the GS is split into four papers, GS 1, 2, 3, 4. And those papers in turn contain history, geography, Indian society, Indian polity, constitution polity, international relations, Indian economy, science and technology, disaster management, environment, internal security, and then comes the GS Force, which is similar in both MPSC, UPSC, which is known as the ethics paper. So these are four papers of GS, and in turn almost containing 8 to 10 subjects, broadly I'm saying. How many subjects? 8 to 10 subjects. Now, so the mains examination is quite comprehensive in nature. उसका scope बड़ा है mains का. Pre का छोटा है, 400 marks के लिए है. और personality test is very important test, because there your capability is assessed by the panel to become, you have to select you as a civil servant. So the civil servant. So civil service क्या करता है? मैंने वो 6-fold points बताए थे आपको. From revenue to the developmental function. And we represented those 4 points in another form. A, implementation, execution of laws and policies. और दूसरा मैंने आपको बताया था, advising as senior bureaucrats, as senior civil servant, advising the ministers and advising the parliamentarians, that is the people's representative. ये मैंने कहा था आपको. Now, that ability to perform those functions well, good, कोई abilities required होती है. तो वो ability आपके पास है या नहीं है? Do you have right temperament, right attitude, aptitude, सब कुछ. तो वो personality test में देखा जाता है. Now, you must have realized that we have prelims, then mains, and then the interview. These are 3 different kinds of stages. There are number of papers, and in turn, so many subjects with a vast syllabus. One. And second, this examination is going to require various kinds of academic skills and abilities. The ability to comprehend things appropriately, the ability to write effectively. This is very important, because आप ये मत भूलिए कि यूपीएससी का मेंस 1750 का है, एमपीएससी का मेंस 1250 का है, यानी कि बड़ा है, उसका वेटेज बड़ा है. सो रिटन आपका ability to write things, put across things effectively, keeping in mind the demand of the question. And then when it comes to the interview, your ability to communicate with the panel members. अलग-अलग ability है उसमें लगती है आपको. If we take all this together as part and parcel of the civil services, then you would realize that this is going to require a long-term plan. और मेरे ख्याल से ये इसी का पार्ट ही है. Why should one start so early? Begin one's own preparation right after 12th, during the graduation, right from the very first year. I think so that you can make a long-term planning, and you can do your graduation to the best of your ability. We are not supposed to neglect the graduation. In whichever stream you are pursuing graduation, please do it to the best of your capacity. That is one thing. And along with that, you can start preparing for, as part and parcel of the long-term planning, for the civil services examination. आपके पास 3 साल है, आपके पास 4 साल है, 4.5 साल है, जितना भी समय आपको मिलेगा, as part and parcel of your graduation, you can use some fraction, maybe let us say 20%, 25% of the time available in 3-4 years, that you can think of using for the civil services examination. Okay. तीसरा जो important है, जिसका मैंने जिक्र अभी किया, it is going to require skills and abilities, lot of abilities. Now, these abilities and skills cannot be developed in 1 month, maybe in 3 months, maybe in 6 months, even 1 year may not be sufficient to develop these abilities. So therefore, it is thought essential to dedicate a substantial amount of time. 12 तक आपने पढ़ाई की होती है, उसमें नंबर आपको लाना होता है. That is fair, absolutely fair, and I'm sure you must have done very good there. But you would be turning to a different kind of examination, and this examination is not known for rote learning. There is a syllabus. there are papers, there are subjects, okay, and there are PYQs as well, यानी कि previous year question papers. Now, what both commissions, UPSC as well as MPSC, demands from you as the aspirant is to study the syllabus, but apply one's own mind, develop one's own thinking ability and critical thinking ability, and thereby you can write the answers. अब इंटरव्यू में तो आपको सीधे सवाल पूछे जाएंगे एज अ प्रोस्पेक्टिव सिविल सर्वेंट. वहां तो आपको कुछ लिखना नहीं है, कुछ टिक मार्क भी नहीं करना है, आपको सामने देख के उनको बोलना है, उनसे बातें करनी है आपको. यू आर सपोज टू टॉक टू देम, कम्युनिकेट विद देम डायरेक्टली. ओके, आई टू आई कॉन्टैक्ट उसमें होता है. तो दिस इज गोइंग टू रिक्वायर सम अमाउंट ऑफ टाइम, maybe more than 1 year, maybe 2 year, maybe 3 year. And if you have sufficient amount of time at your disposal, then you can prepare your graduation, prepare for the graduation to the best of your ability, as I stated earlier, and you can use some amount of time, okay, in a regular basis, on regular basis, regularly, consistently, continuously, in order to prepare for the civil services examination, and thereby, as part of that, develop the abilities of that. So therefore, Unique Academy, since its inception, has come up with the 3 years integrated batch. Now, this is available in 2 formats. So one is the weekend batch, which is going to start from 18th of July. 18th of July, yani ki this month's 18th of July, Saturday, Sunday, which is a weekend batch. But then there is another format, which is known as the weekday. Okay, from Monday to Friday. So this is the weekday batch. And we are going to start with the weekday batch a bit late, that is on 3rd of August, because so many students must be still in the process of getting admitted to the graduation, the stream of their choice, so on and so forth. So the weekend batch is going to commence on 18th of July, and the weekday batch, which is from Monday to Friday, scheduled, that is going to going to commence on from 3rd of August. So these are the 2 formats. Now, what we do as part and parcel of the 3 years integrated course, so we split the entire syllabus into the first year, then the second year, and then the third year. Okay, so we split it, and we generally introduce students to the scheduled, okay, of the first year, the second year, the second year, and the third year. Now, usually what happens as far as the first year is concerned of this unique initiative, in first year, we introduce students, and that is the core of the teaching program for the first year. We introduce students through the NCERT textbooks from 7th to 12th. We introduce students to core concepts, fundamental concepts of each subject. Now, history has concepts, geography has concepts, economy has concepts, polity constitution has its concepts. So is the case of S&T, ethics, so on and so forth, IR as well. So conceptual clarity is very, very important. So our first year is dedicated to something called as the conceptual foundation. And the reference that we rely on for that is the 7th standard NCERT to the 12th standard NCERT. And this is essential not only for the UPSC, but this is essential even for the MPSC. You don't worry about that. And this weekend as well as weekday batch that I had written a while ago, these are going to be for UPSC as well as the MPSC. You don't worry about that. So conceptual foundation. And what we do here is to, yes, as I stated earlier, building solid conceptual foundation. Number 2, we encourage students to read more than the textbooks. तो टेक्स्ट बुक तो आपको पढ़नी ही है, लेकिन उससे और कुछ हम पढ़ सकते हैं क्या? तो we encourage them so that you can be exposed to the larger debate and discourse about some issues, so on and so forth. As part of that encouragement, we encourage students to read very seriously a newspaper. depending upon your medium. So if you have English medium, then you can well start with Indian Express, then the Hindu. Okay, so reading newspaper is also something which is introduced here, how to read newspaper, so on and so forth. Okay, then importantly, since the writing ability acquires critical importance in the journey of the civil services examination, both UPSC as well as MPSC, we encourage students to start writing on regular basis. Not essentially in the form of there is a question and then you are supposed to answer that. What we tend to rather do is this. You read newspaper on regular basis, get to read, say for example, for 2 weeks, 3 weeks on a topic, any current topic, read so many news items on that, editorials, pieces of articles from the newspaper. You read those articles, maybe 15 articles, 20 articles on the same issue. Read those articles, make micro notes out of those articles, and then you write your own piece of argument, yeah, article, let us say, on the same subject. So exposing students to read a lot on a given topic. Lot का मतलब कितना होगा? 10 pages, 15 pages होगा, उससे ज्यादा नहीं है, घबराइए मत. And then we ask students, we encourage students to summarize that and what make one's own article out of that, prepare one's own article out of that. तो ये पढ़ना भी जरूरी है और लिखना भी जरूरी है. These are the skills which are introduced here as far as that is various initiatives are introduced here in order to develop those skills. We organize interactions with our toppers, then serving bureaucrats. So first year, it's something which is not known for the core academic teaching here. We do take up conceptual foundation here in the form of the classroom teaching, but we encourage students to think about so many other abilities, okay, so that their outlook can begin to become broader and comprehensive, and they can start reflecting on things around them, because the aptitude that a civil servant and a civil service examination aspirant requires is to look around and look at everything from a broader perspective. And that is what we slowly, steadily imbibe here in the very first year of the 3 years integrated course. Now, the second year is dedicated to something called as the mains syllabus. And this is very, very important as far as the journey of 3 years is concerned. So what we do in the second year is to take up the teaching of the UPSC and MPSC mains examination. 4 GS papers, 1 optional if you are doing UPSC. As far as MPSC is concerned, there is no optional now. The optional is being dropped last week by the MPSC. So whatever main syllabus, so therefore the second year is going to be very important as far as the 3 years integrated course is concerned. Now in the fourth year, what we do is one thing, थोड़ा सा अगर मेंस का सिलेबस बचता है, रिमेनिंग मेन सिलेबस, ओके, ये शायद 2-3 महीने का बच सकता है. दूसरा है राइटिंग प्रैक्टिस. दिस इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट पार्ट ऑफ द थर्ड ईयर. राइटिंग प्रैक्टिस ऑफ 4 months. Okay, and here the tests are very, very important. So 4 months, मानिए कि जब तीसरा साल आपका जून से शुरू होगा, जून, जुलाई, अगस्त, the remaining main syllabus, and then from September, October, November, December, yeah, at least till end of November, we expose students to rigorous test series. यानी कि मेंस का एक्चुअली प्रिपरेशन होने के पहले ही, प्रीलिम्स देने के पहले ही आपका मेंस का प्रिपरेशन होना चाहिए. सो देयरफॉर दिस इज अ रंगीत तालीम इन अ सेंस. थ्रू द टेस्ट and rigorous test series practice is what we do in the 4 months. And the last, उसमें तीसरा है 5 months का एक slot हम किसके लिए रखते हैं? This is for the preliminary examination. Now this is generally done when you write the preliminary examination. मानिए कि आप 27 का हम सोच रहे, if we are thinking about 27, so usually the UPSC या MPSC prelims are scheduled in May, say for example. अब this year का अगर हम सोचते हैं तो this year UPSC prelims was scheduled on 24th of May, and immediately in the next week, on next Sunday, that is 31st of May, MPSC had scheduled its prelims. So May का month होता है वो. It is a month of May. तो अगर मुझे ये देना था, मानिए कि आप 27 का सोच रहे हो, मई में है, जस्ट हाइपोथेटिकली, ओके, तो देन यू हैव टू स्टार्ट प्रिपेयरिंग फॉर द प्रीलिम्स एटलीस्ट फ्रॉम जनवरी। तो 5 महीने मिलेंगे, जनवरी से लेकर आपको मई तक 5 महीने। सो ये जब आप प्रीलिम्स दोगे ना, उस प्रीलिम्स के पहले वाले जो 5 महीने हैं वो लास्ट ईयर का हिस्सा होगा। सो अगेन द सेकंड ईयर इज वेरी वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट इन वन सेंस ऑफ द टर्म, एंड सो इज द केस ऑफ द थर्ड ईयर। उसका मतलब यह होगा कि एज फार एज द फर्स्ट ईयर इज कंसर्न, वी ले डाउन द फाउंडेशन। नाउ एज फार एज द सेकंड ईयर इज कंसर्न, सो यहाँ पे वो जो मेंस का कोर सिलेबस का है वो है, एंड उस पे अगर जो आप देखोगे, मुझे पूछोगे कि क्या होगा होने वाला है थर्ड ईयर में, द राइटिंग प्रैक्टिस। सो स्टूडेंट्स एंड पेरेंट्स, दिस इज हाउ वी take the 3 years integrated course as unique initiative forward in the form of first year, second year, and third year. You can check out other details by visiting our office, yeah, by asking queries and questions through our social media platforms. You don't worry about that. So this is it I wanted to share with all of you. I thank you all of you, and I appeal all of you to definitely think about civil services as one of the career options. Think about that, think seriously, and then take a conscious decision. It should not be a sentimental decision, because you would be investing very important years of your life, your educational career, and along with that, your own work, your own labor, your sweat, your money, and everything. So therefore, you have to be very serious about that. Okay. And on the basis of these kinds of discussions and inputs, that you can take that kind of decision. So thank you all. Thank you.